What's up, everyone? We're live tonight with Johnny Felicetti from Johnny Racks. How are you doing tonight, John?
Good. Excited to talk to you about skinks.
Did I pronounce that right?
What? Say it again. Let me hear.
Felicetti
Perfect. Perfect.
or no?
Perfect.
No, maybe you muted yourself.
Let me see. Mic's on. You there?
Yep, there you go.
All right.
So was Felicetti right though? I couldn't
Yeah,
hear you.
it's
All
perfect.
right, all right.
Yep.
So when did you first start getting Western and blotches?
So I want to say it's about five years now. I got my original mail from Dave Sutton, and then I had a couple females I got from Ty Parks when he had like that list of skinks that he put out, and then also I had a baby that Jeff Green produced that Kim Lancy actually helped me out get, and we that was the one who I was able to prove out for about 3 years in a row now. So
So then your first season breeding them, how did that go?
first year I had that's what my mentality is like zero expectations. So the first year it was a no go. And actually I think that first year I had the Jeff Green's girl. And I had a feeling that she probably wasn't going to take, just being that, when you start moving animals across, the states, you know that it tends to need to cycle them properly in order to kind of get where you want it and dial it in. So I had that zero expectations, but that second year, um, she took. And the funny thing is, like, I didn't believe it. I'm like, I have a feeling it is, but I'm not expecting it. Yeah, I still don't think. And so I was able to get a litter, and she only locked twice. Even one of the locks it wasn't even that good because the male is much bigger. So I had to like play a little bit of a maneuvering game where I had to get him to kind of get her in the right spot for him to be able to. Because if he grabbed too low on her, it was not working. And you know how it works. Like sometimes you have the bigger animals, small animals, and just trying to find a way to make it work in a sense. So
So then were they adults you started with for the Western?
yes, I think Dave Sutton's the male was I think from what I remember he was like over 10 years old. Like I mean he's real old now, and he's one of my better breeders for sure.
Well, they can breed, some up until their 30s, so you still got potentially some good years left
Oh
on them.
yeah, oh yeah. But some of the males they can be a little frustrating because all they think about is breeding and getting them back on food. It's tough and at some point I'm learning myself that getting kind of intervening and kind of hand feeding them really help because all they think about is breeding. They just do that. They do that. I call it the Komodo dragon pace around the cage. They do this little thing. You'll notice when you're getting yours going. They just all they think about is breeding, and then just the fat storage in their tail starts to deplete, and it can be a little dangerous. But you know,
I noticed him I don't know if prancing around is the best word.
I
The
call it the
cage.
Komodo dragon strut. It sounds cool,
Okay.
because
Yeah,
they're not
strutting.
Komodo dragons.
Strut sounds better than
Yeah.
prancing. Well, he was strutting around the other day, and I was hoping that he'd be interested in shed, but he wasn't ready yet, sadly.
Yeah, you'll see. He's totally focused and dialed in, and he's just really trying to find a girl. He's pushing through that cage, just kind of moving around, just that total dominance. Testosterone moving through. It's ready to go, and you'll notice it once that male sheds.
So, how low and long do you brumate the westerns?
Yeah, so I mean, I could use an example on how I breed some of the cooler climate species, and I think it's a pretty interesting example. Like for instance, like when you go on a plane, and like the pilot comes on and says, "Oh, we're preparing for landing," and like you get all excited, you're like, "Yo, we're about to be there," like but it isn't. We got a long time. Maybe a half hour until you land, and I think it's the whole process of that. The pilot is descending, slowing it down the speed, getting ready to put the wheels down and kind of it's a real big process, and I believe that's kind of the concept of what goes on is you know it's not necessarily it's not exactly how long that they need to stay cool down for. I mean, as the blotch, I try to keep them in a shutdown mode, which I call the shutdown mode probably below that 55-degree range. They need a little longer than some of the other cooler climated species, but that's kind of how I go with the concept. So it's just like being a breeder, we're the pilot too, right? So I have to not try to go, and I got a guy in Australia that really kind of put things in perspective for me, because he does things outdoor, and that's Richard Connolly. Is like we don't want to push them into you know winter to summer like conditions. It's slowing down the speed on the aircraft, right? It's dropping down low. It's not all just what we think as the passenger being from the plane and getting right to the runway, and it's not like that. If you can bring that into those cooler climate species, I think it's pretty important. Now, as far as the blotch females, I try to let them have that shutdown period for a long time, or longer, but it is all gradual. It's just a gradual change. That's how I look at it. But yeah, my females are down, in that cool below 55 range for a solid, maybe 6 weeks, but it's brumation's not crazy long. It's just the concept of it, just like, again, like, as breeders, we are in a sense the pilot, right? So we all have the similar concept to land that plane, but each pilot has their different ways of doing things. Obviously, they have to follow that concept. So again, maybe something that I might be doing, might be different from what someone else is doing. I think as long as we have the concept, we can all flourish. And that's how I looked at it when I talked to Richard Connolly, talked to guys like Kim Lancy, Dave Sutton. You got Phil Tremper. Some of these guys that are doing it, their concept is the same, but they are doing things different than I am. And that's why I look at like things with like, a cookbook or ingredients, try to get ingredients from other people and kind of create your own dish in a sense. And that's kind of what I did. I kind of got guys that do it outdoors, so I understand how they're doing it. Guys that are doing successfully indoors, like Kim Lancy and Phil Tremper here in the States. I even got a good mentor as Dave Sutton that kind of taught me a lot of how to do things and dial me in. It's not perfect. I'm still learning, but that's kind of how I would put an example out there, just like flying a plane in a sense, right?
So you go low and slow, kinda, and pretty much a good rough range. You're telling them maybe around 6 weeks, and depending
I
on
would
the
say that. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, and you want your females down. Like they do the they have that burrow and that little. It's like with the blotch they do like the little doggy. You know what I'm talking about. Like it looks like a dog laying down on like a beanbag or something like that. Just that little curl, and
yeah.
you see it when they're sitting kind of burrowed like that. That's what I call what would be the shutdown. They're fully shut down. I mean, you could say we say brumation. I would consider that just in my opinion. It's not a fact, but there's a possibility I look at it as a hibernation because these guys are done. Like they compared to some of the other stuff that maybe kind of pop out, or some people that have indoor cool climated Taliqua, it's like they sit outside their hide, like in and outside their hide, and kind of just lay there. Whereas I kind of almost think that the blotch kind of pretty much are in a deep, almost to a point where they're hibernating. Obviously it's different in the wild than it is indoors because we can't simulate the sun. A day going to 60 degrees and then they pop out, kind of get some sun and pop back in. But there is in the wild too a cool cycle, a cool shutdown, almost like a hibernation, where these guys are down, for a good amount of time, in my opinion. Yeah, it's not fact. We all have different things, and I'm still learning. I take in what everybody else says too, and hey, man, if I could change and get something that I maybe don't know that helps, it would work.
Well, and I noticed, every time I would check on most of mine in the brumation chamber, they wouldn't move. They're going to be in that exact same spot, curled up. One of the three would move a little more, but he was on a higher level. So, it could have been that extra 2 degrees. He wasn't as cold some of the times.
Yeah, I had a male pop. I had a male pop out for me this year, and that's another thing I'm learning is, even though I had them really cool, I was noticing, it's something that I'm noticing now is even barometric pressure and storms. Like the inside would still be cold, but once this humidity went up, I was watching some of them pop out, and I'm like, wow. again, I don't. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't deviate or make me go, oh no, I'm gonna fail this year. No, it's they're doing what they want, need. Let them do it. If they continuously, pop out, I turn the lights on. If they're out, I'm not. I have to let go. It's like what does Bob Ross say? It's a happy mistake, right? So it's a happy mistake, and we'll put the lights on for you, and that's how I kind of just go engage and see what's going on. And that's what I've noticed this year, that when humidity kind of spikes, they were popping out a little bit, and that's something I'm learning.
So when you flip the lights on, is that just temporary to give them some heat?
Yeah, so I mean, for instance, you never know. You never know what it could be, Alex. Like, sometimes, you could do everything right prepping before brumation, and we're cleaning out their systems, and we're doing these things to prepare, but sometimes they might still have something in their gut, and that you have to prepare for that. And I think that's why I'll turn the lights on. And it may be something that can help somebody is like, get yourself some, like, if you're keeping those cool climate species, get a halogen bulb. You know why? Because that's a sun patch, that's a sunspot. If you have like a 50-watt regular light bulb, it's going to be hard because the ambients are not going to really get up, or that hot spot for the animal where he or she can kind of get that system hot. I think a halogen will work good because even though it might be cold in the room, we can get that nice hot spot and kind of get their system going. To me, like, all these reptiles are computer systems, and we're just learning how to understand their system. And that's kind of how I go with doing this. Is so it's like, if she or he is out, you know what? I'm gonna put the halogen on. We're gonna let it go out. And literally, when I tell you, 10 out of 10, that's very rare that I put that on. Couple days, I pop back in. Right? Literally, I'll pop back in. They're gone. They're back to hiding again. Shut the light off. Call it a day, and they're back into winterizing. And it is what it is. And that's kind of how I roll. And very rare I've ever seen an animal just stay out forever. It has been once, but that was because I just shipped her in, and she was in a different part of the states. And I do believe that kind of interfered, or kind of had a stressor on her, and she was out pretty much all brumation. And again, that's when I just leave the lights on. And I didn't, to be honest with you, I didn't do it that first time. I was young, and I made mistakes, and I don't know if it was a mistake, but it was one of those things. I had that mindset of like, I need to put her in, she has to go in brumation. Whereas now I'm learned to say, you know what, like, she wants to be out. She's out for a reason in her basking spot. She wants the best. So I'll turn the light on and get her system going. You need that metabolism and metabolic rate to get going. And you never know too, because there could be something in the gut, and you do not want that be a problem by just leaving the lights off, because there's a possibility that something bad could happen.
Now, do you empty them out about 2 weeks prior to brumation to at least attempt to get everything out of the gut?
Something I'm still learning. I mean, I've done it 3 weeks, and something I learned from Phil Tremper. He was just talking to me recently. He likes to do a nice warm soak, and there's a good concept to that. When you give them a nice warm soak, it kind of loosens their muscles up, and usually they'll defecate and kind of get everything out. But some don't always do that. So I like to do 3 weeks. I'm starting to learn myself. Maybe there's correlation between night temp drops and day temps that maybe I kind of need to figure out, because it's not just the time, right? It's not just the time frame. It might be temperature orientated. Because what happens is, if you're getting those night temps down, right, and then you still have those good day temps, but sometimes these guys, they'll start to slow themselves down. They'll go away. And then, well, you're sitting yourself, oh, you got to poop. But again, their wants and needs, they're not doing that. They're hiding away, but they have something inside their belly still. How do you gauge that? So that's where something I'm learning myself, how to, manipulate in a way. And I do believe it's probably temperature orientated, or how do I approach it? Just like a pilot, again, back to the plane thing, as a pilot, how do I approach the situation and kind of gauge it properly and make it work? We'll see. I'm still learning. I mean, and I'm not saying, most people will say it's 3 weeks, but that's that's what you have in your program. Everyone's program is different, and people do things differently. So it's very hard to gauge if it's 3 weeks, is it 2 weeks, and something I'm trying to correlate is temperature. I think there's a correlation there that you can try to put in the program, and but I'm still learning myself. So
See, and I used to do 2 weeks initially for the northerns, and then I would notice at least a couple, post brumation would still have something that they're pooping out.
It's
So
happened to me. I'll be the person to tell you we're not perfect. So that it's absolutely happened to me in the cooler climate species, and the cooler climated species. You really got to watch out and be careful. Sometimes they do know what's going on, but when again their wants and needs, when we take their wants and needs away, they don't know that I'm going to just shut their lights off for 8 weeks. That's that's barbaric. They don't know that. So, but some do have that instinct, but some don't, and that's what it is. As a breeder that has a lot of animals, it's trying to find this, like, again, a puppet on the string, trying to make sure all the strings work. So again, that's why I would tell anybody, the animal's out, pop the lights on, use a halogen bulb, because the halogen bulb, it's going to stay cool in one part of the cage, but it will bring down a tremendous amount of heat, tremendous amount of heat in one area. And they'll find that. They're going to find that area. They're going to they're going to get their computer system going, and then break down and maybe poop out. And I've done it. I've seen it. And then when they do that, I'll bet most likely just say, you know what, I'm done now. I got that out. We're going to step away and go back into brumation. And literally, I would say 9 times out of 10, maybe more, they're gone.
So for the people that brumate like I do in the like brumation chamber or wine fridge, you think it'd be better to go for 4 weeks just to be better safe than
Yeah, so
sorry?
that's a great point, Alex. Because yeah, that is a very good point. Because a lot of people sometimes will move their animals, and maybe there's, again, it's not something I do, but maybe that would be good to talk to somebody that maybe does do things like that and kind of have their way. I can't tell you, but again, that is a good point. Maybe it would be longer. Maybe finding a way to use some belly heat for, if you have, like, say you have a rack system, right, and you're putting them in a rack system to cool down, maybe have have a underbelly heat for like a week or two, because they're 100% going to find that warm spot, break down, get their systems going, and then start to kind of, get whatever they have in them out. Because again, you don't want to move them into those warm conditions, and then it was too short, and then move them. It's just like acclimating fish. Like, you don't just throw the fish into the fish tank that you got from a pet store. You want to acclimate them and get them into the temperatures they need. And I think, maybe that's a good point for you. And maybe if you talk to somebody else that does it that way, they could give their insight, because they're more of an expert than I would be, in a sense.
And in how I got mine set up, I do have the 6-inch heat tape for mine's more so just so it doesn't get super cold because I'm using the outside cold air in Minnesota. Whereas, someone that uses a wine fridge might set that with more accurate thermostat than I can.
Yeah, agreed. But yeah, I mean, that would probably be my best bet. But again, not everyone can make a perfect world, and I understand that. Some people are subjected to just like a room, and finding ways to being able to still give the lizard their wants and needs. And I think maybe if they were to move them, and that was the only thing they can do, now I would advise to have a room and being able to cool them down in that room. But if they had that, maybe underbelly heat would help, just in case they pop out. You can maybe turn that heat tape on. I mean, I know, unfortunately, if some other animals are down and you turn the whole thing up, that could be a problem too. But
Now, this one's gonna be harder depending on where you live.
okay.
But do you think probably the most effective way then is brumating in like the whole room system like you have versus like a wine fridge?
I yeah, I mean, again, if you're like in southern Florida, you know, it's near impo not, I mean, it's pretty hard to kinda get where you want. I mean, I think it's possible, but your goal is not to, be here and then here in like a very fast amount of time. that's what I think, your timing starts to become really off. So there's ways that you could structure it to make it work by, maybe waking up your males earlier. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, you gotta plan and see how it goes, in a sense.
Roger from Blue Tongue Morphs out of Australia just commented saying that in the wild that they still come out and sun themselves. So yours is definitely the most natural of the ways.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. I brought up that point, that there's a full shutdown period, but again, it's different from the way we do things. I mean, yeah, we could take breaks, and that's something I do. Maybe you do a break here and there, but in the wild, there's days where it goes, above temperature and they pop out. And I like that way. That's why sometimes I like to get breaks or turn the lights on because you're kind of regenerating that system to get going again and they get their drink, get rehydrated, maybe pop back in. So, those are things that, I love, you got Roger, you got Richard Connolly out there that do things, like Richard that does things outside. It's like, that's what I took in on trying to be successful is the way they do things outside. It's not all robotic in a sense. It's, anything could happen. So,
Now, for westerns, what's their breeding window usually on average?
it depends, depends. If you're keeping temperatures very hot and then your night temps are very hot, you're going to speed the process. It's all how the system works, and the metabolism's moving. So if you could preserve, like, like I say, I always say to a lot of people, like putting meat in the freezer, we're preserving them. So that's why, like, I talked to the guy like Richard, is like when they're outside, those temperatures drop like a lot. And this is why the windows start to expand a little more. Whereas if you're just keeping them hot and hot at night, you're speeding that system, that process up. You're shortening your window. But as far as the way I do things, you know, I like to tend to drop, those nights, into the high 60s, and it gives you a little more time. So yeah, I mean, I say a week and change, and a lot of this I've learned from, Dave Sutton, just, getting those nights to kind of drop a little to the 60s. And you're gonna kind of lengthen that window. So yeah, I'd say about maybe a week and change you'd have, if that, a blotched is, you know, I've noticed, and maybe 5 days, 6 days, if that. It's not, yeah, it's not crazy long. I mean, sometimes it is longer, but again, the dictation is all of the way the temperatures you have. We're trying to preserve them. If you could preserve them and slow things down by understanding the temperatures, that's how I've kind of done things and learned from others, and seen beneficial to me. The more you speed the process, like Richard Conley made a perfect example to me a lot, and you tell a lot of people is, getting them into winter, right into summer like conditions. I mean, you are just shortening your window like crazy, like to a point where, you know it's a hope for the best, fingers crossed. But we don't want that. We want to, increase our odds a little more, and I think that temperatures can play a big role in a sense. And again,
And
this is
that
the way I do things. I'm not, I'm not an expert. I just I'm big into, getting in there and seeing what's going on. What are they doing? What are the females telling you? If I could stagger some, I think that helps. Maybe waking up males at different periods of times, waking females up different periods of times, so we can have good correlation and good timing. I think that could help big time.
Well, and that's smart, it gives you multiple options. You can't always control, exactly when their windows start or end.
Yeah, I mean, if you're waking up all males at the same time, or maybe all females at the same time, indoors. Again, this is always different from outdoors, indoors. The guy, fortunately, especially me and you, because you're in Minnesota, I'm a little more south than you, and like, I believe that, you know we can't get everything outside long periods of time. It's very short. And so we got to play with what we have in a sense. So if I were to wake up all males at the same time and all females at the same time, you know, some males might not fire. And if half those don't fire up, you only have a few males to, whatever females you have. Your odds are just kind of decreasing in a sense,
And that's where the downfall. It's skinks are kind of a numbers game where it helps having more.
Yeah, yeah. No, strength by numbers. It's like going to the roulette table. If you just put it on one number, man, your odds are very not there. But if you put it on, 10, I think you're gonna have a little better odds. And then there's so many different little, microcosms of what's going on. Like meaning like your temperature, right? When are you feeding? What time are you waking up both sexed animals? There's so many different things that could increase your odds instead of doing it, just a certain way. I don't think that even in Mother Nature, nothing is one way. You got Roger just made a point that when they're outside and Mother Nature starts to say, hey, it was 30 degrees yesterday, but now it's 60. A lot of animals are going to be out at that time. They're going to come out, they're going to get some water, they're going to get some sun, bring that energy back, and then do what they have to do, and then sink back down and kind of go back into a brumation. I think it's important.
What are you seeing for gestation for westerns?
Yeah, I don't go by days. I mean, most of the time. So if I were to breed them end of February, maybe touching March, usually I'll get babies in July. Usually early July, maybe the first week of July. But you know, as that we were just, it's funny, you sent me a video, and it was very interesting, about the female intermedia kind of gauging herself upwards to the light, warming herself up. And it's like, in a sense, you know that's why a lot of Talikos sometimes are a little tougher than some of the species that have eggs. They are their own incubator, and I think that, each individual is different. And if you can understand each individual, like for instance, there's some Westerns I have that are very shy. And, I've learned to, think about it. She's her own incubator. She's not going to want to have babies if I'm going in there bothering and mucking with her a bunch of times. If I give her privacy, and she'll most likely reward me. And that's happened to me with a few females. And I'm not saying that's 100% factual, but I do feel that Western's a little more, shyish. And I do believe where they come from, it's very harsh. A lot of things after them. They're very predatorial. They're they're definitely a little more crabby. Different in a sense. And giving them the privacy, I think, helps. Again, the female's their own incubator, so she wants to be in prime condition, prime mentally. I think there's a mental aspect to it, prime mentally and prime physically. And I think that's what I've noticed, but it's not factual. It's just something that I've seen what's going on here for sure.
Well, and the hard thing on the gestation length, it's I'm never good at catching ovulations to, be 100% honest.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned to palpate, but it's different from like the geckos I have, where I can palpate, feel the eggs, I know what I'm getting. Whereas I can palpate, I see where the follicles are at. I don't know where the correlation is. I don't know, when he's planting the seed, so I can't manipulate that. I don't understand that. These are things I'm learning, but I haven't, figured it out. But yeah, I'll know. Like I've noticed with Blotch, I've noticed more. I try not to muck with the occipitalis. That when you take a female and you kind of lean her and start to let her walk, and you kind of put a little pressure, you start to feel little beads, right? And a few years in a row now that I felt the female that had the beads, those follicles start to grow, and we had babies. So there's understanding that, but there's no factual to it, because I don't know when the correlation of timing is. So yeah, I know that she was bred, but how do we find a way to get that to kind of meet together? You know,
When were you able to feel the follicles? Was that after pairing?
it was after pairing, yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, like I've had it where maybe two females where it was pretty much during locking. I felt that, and it's very small. It's like like smaller, a little smaller than a marble, probably. I would say, and you feel them, and you can actually feel the amount of babies. Like I late term I felt the amount of babies by palpating, and the guess was right because I was able to count how many. It took a couple times. You can't just know it the first time. So I palpated a couple more times, and you kind of get the idea of what you're going to get. Now I've gotten infertiles too, so it's not perfect, right?
I've always, I guess, worried that, and I guess maybe I'm overthinking it, but the more you play, like maybe not to play with them too much, or it'll stress them out, or I don't know.
That's why I tend to stay away from occipitalis doing that. To me, it's like I could tell by the way they blow up that there is, but yeah, I agree with you. But these guys kind of hide themselves in tight little cracks, and applying a touch of pressure isn't the worst thing in the world. That's how I look at it. Same thing with Leachianis. Like I palpate them. These guys literally put themselves in cork bark and kind of squeeze themselves in. Sometimes they'll be squeezed on top of each other. So if I see that, I think a little bit of pressure, not squeezing, just light pressure. What you do is you put a little pressure and you let them walk. And as you're doing that, you can start to feel it. I think what's his name? Kevin McCurley did something like that on YouTube. He'll take his retics and kind of put them, let them kind of crawl, and he starts to kind of, I think he even puts his head on and starts to let him crawl and starts to feel the follicles. You could do that with skinks, but again, I wouldn't, tell anybody out there just to go doing squeeze in there. It takes a little experience, like swinging a baseball bat, but just applying a little bit of pressure and letting them walk. And especially like Blotch, they're tough as nails, man. They they don't even care. If anything, they're probably hissing at me, but
See, and yeah, I've heard it done with snakes all the time, but I guess I assume
similar. They're
being,
both not far off, right?
yeah, but they're smaller, so I guess it would be harder. You probably haven't tried ultrasounding, have you?
So yeah, that's where I feel that point too of like doing it inside their enclosure, like the palpating feeling, is much different than taking them out, going to driving to the vet and getting an ultrasound. Now, obviously, if we have it here, it's I don't know if there's some people out there that have done that with Taliqua, but yeah, that's something I don't really push because the palpating feeling is literally like 5 seconds. It's not long at all. It's literally just walk, feel, gone, done. Have a nice day. You know.
Well, and I've heard of people trying it, like when I talked with Dave, it might have been the guy from Gourmet Rodent. He would ultrasound his skinks, and he was at the time pretty certain he was going to have a lot of babies, and ended up with not the best results.
Yeah, and I feel with Taliqua, especially the variant species, like their scalation is totally different than something of a snake. So I don't know how difficult that is to ultrasound. Maybe there's somebody out there that is pretty good with it, but I feel like they'd definitely be a little different than snakes. But
Yeah, at the end of the day, some I've never played with. I
yeah,
think it'd be, if a friend had one that lived close and they'd let me borrow it, I'd definitely try it.
yeah, in house, right? Because
Yeah.
you don't want to muck with the females too much, and that's understandable.
Do baby westerns, they start out pretty easy?
Um, like they're just like any Taliqua in a sense that if you have them going, like if they're nice and healthy and pretty big, yeah. I mean, with westerns, I noticed compared to some others, I wouldn't doubt because I don't have multifasciata of the Centralians. I think they're more like insectivorous, and they love that movement. So when I had mine born, like you get a little cricket. I like to pull off the back legs, and just you don't want them swallowing that kind of hard shell, especially how soft they are when they're born. So they like movement. So that's kind of how I pushed it. Like hey, I've learned from others that insects are a good source, and they'll pound them nonstop. Like I knew you were gonna give me some dubias. You're gonna help me out. I wouldn't doubt dubias would be great. Because they just the dubias have a lot. Like when you gut load them, they have so much inside them, the nutrition that's gonna get those nice and large, those babies.
And I'm curious to see this year how much it might not affect anything, but I increased the amount of dubia I gave my adult northerns this year to see if the extra protein helps in the overall percentages, or how quick the females bounce back, or
Yeah, I believe so, and that's a good point you have there, like, bouncing back, and I just believe that, you know, it's important on both sides. Before brumation, I think it's important to, for your, it is just as important to me to set your female up right going into brumation, even as just as equal as coming out. I think it is there's a part there that they both need to be. It's important for both sides. I think the preparation for going in and then coming out of is, my opinion, equal. Because going in, if she doesn't feel, going in, if she's not in full condition, when she comes out, she's gonna know. She's gonna say, "Hey, you know what? I'm just pretty much either reabsorb or not do much anything at all." So
I think I'd worry even more on the colder breeding species. If they're not in good enough condition, they might not
absolutely.
even live.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Is there's anything that's bothering them at all? It's a recipe for disaster. So
Like I know, northerns, when they're down in, we'll say, 70 ambient, their immune system's a lot lower, but I guess I always figured at 50 it's got to be significantly lower.
yeah, absolutely.
So, to your knowledge, how many different like bloodlines are out there for Western and Blotch?
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of the stock. I think you have a few different bloodlines, correct? Right? We were talking about it. So
Yeah,
I
I
have.
got the pair from Menno in the Netherlands.
So that is a good point, because that's what I was going to bring up. So a lot of the stuff in the early days, if I'm not mistaken, Kim Lancy got one of his really nice orange ones from Menno, and Menno kind of established some here in the States, and then Kim Lancy established a bunch. So that's a bloodline I have. I've also recently, well, I also have the Ty Parks females, and then um, also, I've gotten a few years, pre-CITES 3. I've gotten one blotched, and that was the one that I was able to prove out this year. She had 5 babies and 3 infertile ovums, which is a pretty big, litter for an alpine. So, but yeah, so that's the other bloodline I have. So hopefully I can get the Ty Parks girl going. And yeah, so I guess 1, 2, 3. Oh, actually, and I think I did get, so that Jeff Green girl was partial Phil Tremper bloodline and partial Kim Lancy. So I have that. So I have the Kim Lancy line. I have Phil Tremper, Ty Park, and then I have the new one that I purchased.
Out of the Ty Park ones, have you ever got any babies from Western
No,
or?
so yeah, so the blotched female from Thai, I've got breeding, just never had luck. But I'm still gonna try. And what happens is I was only subjected to like 2 males. It's very hard to get any more stock. And so I was actually had 1 male. So it was like she didn't do anything, so she became on the back burner in a sense, because I wanted to focus on the ones that are proven and doing well. Now that I have a few more extra males, I'm gonna see if I can try to get her this year. But she breeds and she goes into her window and everything, just no luck. So it's not all perfect.
Yeah. Do you do much like food cycling after pairing?
Yeah. So after pairing, we're starting to just you wanna be there for the females, right? We gotta they gotta kind of build up and build up the fat storage, and that's what I kind of do. I'll go in there almost daily, If they want it, and it towards after lockup, if they want it, and you could kind of tell. I think you might see it too, and some other breeders out there. Sometimes females that are showing signs, they are super aggressive towards food. Like they're a little different than some others that maybe are not. Now, I'm not saying that's proven, but that's what I've noticed. So the ones that I see that are like they look at my face and they see and they come at me, we'll focus and dial in on that. And as far as remember, you brought up another question about the westerns. I want to make sure I make that point. So as far as I know, Menno, there was a guy in Florida. I think his name is Matt McLeod. Had the original animals, and he had a variation of bloodlines. Those animals then went to Dave Sutton. I wound up getting most of that basically majority of the Occipitalis collection. And in house, yes, I have different bloodlines. So all originating from Matt McLeod.
Okay.
And Dave Sutton. Well, a lot of stuff is Dave Sutton produced himself. Actually, majority of everything. I don't even know if I have any of the main breeders. The majority of them are just a lot of animals that he produced with variation of bloodline.
I was thinking about it on how you mentioned the original ones that Kim got, the blotches from
Mm-hmm.
Menno. Do you know if those were like Menno's New South Wales ones or is Victorian?
I'm not 100% sure. I pretty sure they. I mean, I would think they're the Highland form. I would assume. So
So, well, yeah, and
the
locale, same Alpine, just locale wise.
yeah.
Like Menno's got a couple different
I think
locale.
back then, I don't know exactly, but back then, I think it was Kim Lancy was like, saw the orange, and as you notice, what they look like now, they're crazy. And I have some that here that are produced, that are super orange, and I guess that's a vision that Kim Lancy saw and put into play, and they're beautiful.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Now you have one of mine that I produced. I'm pretty sure it's
Yeah,
got some
and that
orange in
one's
there.
got, gorgeous orange still.
Yeah.
Even its yellows are phenomenal too.
Yeah, beautiful. That's why I was happy. This new bloodline girl, I call her new bloodline girl. Um, she has some really nice oranges too, like really really nice oranges and like good striping. So hopefully that kind of intermingles with the Lancy line. I mean, I have babies, and a couple of them are really nice, but we're in the premature stages. They're not going to be perfect, but I think that in time there could be something that really comes together with that for sure.
Well, and realistically, even if the first generation's not as fancy orange, being unrelated is more valuable, I think.
I think so. Personally, I think it helps. I mean, yes, you can get away with doing it, but I think getting new bloodline is so awesome and amazing. And again, if the reason why you did this podcast too is you're gearing up. So you have new bloodline that would be great to be. We can do a trade, or if I can acquire, it'd be cool to just have what you can for sure. So.
Um, Behavior wise, and you kind of briefly touched on this, you'd say the blotches are calmer than the westerns, probably.
I wouldn't say. I mean, I guess a little more easily handleable, I guess, the blocks. But everyone who knows that have the Negro Latia that they're hissy pissy, and then once you kind of go in and swim, not all of them, but a fair amount, especially like the babies, they're all hissy pissy. But once you grab them, they're like whatever. I wouldn't say the thing about the Occipitalis is they're more like it's hard to explain. Like they're very like kind of if you grab them, they'll start to back up on you. They're more like I guess timid and flight. I guess the best word is flight, then fight. They don't really fight. Like they don't really they'll show their mouth, but they won't do anything. But they just don't want to be mucked with too much. And that's actually an animal I enjoy. What I love about the Occipitalis. Is first off that little crabby type style. They walk backwards. The way they kind of it's almost like a crab the way they do things. But um, I like the enjoyment of just watching them, understanding what they're doing, the way they hunt. Whereas like some of the eaters, they just kind of, it's a little more to it with the oxymetalis. They're more, watching them act like as almost like predators. I do believe it's harsh where they come from, and it's a little harder to kind of get what they need, so they have to be on. And that's why when I feed them kind of, the quail chicks or, sometimes here and there I'll feed them a mouse, insects, they go nuts. They're like at another level. And it's kind of fun to watch. I don't really try to touch them too much, You could here and there if I have a friend come over or family, kind of just bring them out and hold them. But you'll notice if you're holding them, they kind of start to look backwards. They kind of like see what's going on, like, you know.
Well, and what's harder, when you get more numbers, you can't dedicate as much time to handling as you can to, if you only have one or two.
I mean, in my opinion, that's a benefit. And why it's a benefit is because you don't with the oxybitalis, and if you could say some of the others, but I mean, I would think, and I don't have multifasciated yet. I would love to. It's just almost impossible. But I do believe those guys are kind of separated, in my opinion. I'm not saying I don't, but it's just what I see is the less you mess with them, the better I think you'll be, in my opinion. So I think it's a benefit as a breeder that has a fair amount that you're just letting them be. We're not, it's not a petting zoo. As a breeder, we're trying to have reproduction, and sometimes almost treating them as a wild animal. I think could be a benefit for sure as a breeder. That's what I see. It's I don't have a ton of animals, so I can't say that that's the nail on the head and that's a fact. But that's just what I've noticed, that you probably have better success just hands off with some of those. I think those two species, in my opinion.
See, I wonder though how much it is, like how many generations we've been captive breeding them. Because, like, in Australia, they'll say, like, how super calm blotches are.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, I do believe that they all are handable. Like they are, because I don't want to go in that direction. I think they're the ultimate pet. But as a breeder and a person that produces, that's how I look at it. But I mean, you and I know that they're, to me, they're one of the best pets. All, if I could, if, in time, obviously it's different from Australia. They can just go hop into a pet store, and just get them, and they could treat them as such. And if they do, it's they're not as bad. Most of them all are in a sense friendly, but for people, some of us in the States that are trying to work with them, it's, you got to look at it as a different way, almost treating them as, let them be in their own environment, don't really muck, you know but some of them aren't. I can Blotch, I can just pick them up, and it's not that big of a deal.
Well, and see, most of mine are like that. I do have some northern males that are, they would prefer me just leave them alone. But,
Yeah,
I got enough.
go ahead,
Oh,
sorry.
go on.
No, and you see, you see, I think I kind of forgot what I was gonna say.
Well, I was just gonna say, having a variety, if one or two doesn't want to get handled, I have others that like to come out whenever, that if I want to take one out, or if one of the kids or someone else, that opportunity's there.
Exactly, and I think that's also, as a breeder, and other breeders who have them, each one is their own individual. So like there is some that you're just like, you get it, like you could just go up to that one, and that's what I love about a lot of the blocks they have. They'll just start walking towards you. It's the funniest thing. They just start looking at you. Actually, even some of the baby westerns I just produced this year, I've noticed it because I got, with the babies, you got to go in there a little bit more and try to just see what's going on, see if they're eating properly. And they've been, even though some of the Westerns have been very bold, they're just coming to walk up to me. You're like, they know who I am. I'm the guy who feeds them. So, but each is an individual. So if I have somebody that comes over, I'm sure you feel the same way, and other people do. Is you know which one to take out. For two reasons. He's not going to bite you, and he's okay with it. Or he or she is okay with it.
Yeah.
So,
Um, so it we kind of touched on it briefly earlier when we were talking on the westerns, but you cool your blotch pretty much the same, like less than 55, yeah.
So there is a moment. So I'm going back to the plane thing. When a plane descends, it's descending down, and it's not straight like this, like, oh, it's 55. That's what I've noticed, their shutdown, like where they're really pretty much, you could get them there. But there is a few weeks in there that I get them into the 40s. I mean, I want to be as natural as I can. I literally, like, being where I'm at in the Northeast. I literally mimic exactly what's going on the outside. There is, this where you're at is, you're gonna descend down, and then you're gonna have real cool spots, and then you start to kind of go back the other way and go up. Is you want to get there? You want to, like a plane pattern. You want to get, as you're descending. It's connecting the dots. That's what I try to do. I try to connect the dots. So there is a few weeks where we get cold, and I know it's going to get into the 40s there, and I want it to happen. We are literally, I'm following what's going on out there. We're having a cold snap. It's going to get real cold. Cool. Let's go. Let's get them into the 40s. That's what we're going to do. I'm not going to keep them into the 40s for 5 weeks. I just don't think there's much of a point. But I try my best to get them within a couple weeks. Maybe you could even just get a week to say, hey, let's get you guys down here, and then we'll start to work our way back up. And that's literally what I do.
Well, and it does seem like, patience is persistence to kind of
Absolutely.
like your key to success in breeding.
Well, that's my point I made in the beginning with the pilot thing. When the pilot comes on and says we're preparing for landing, the passengers, as maybe breeders that are getting into this, are like, oh, we're here. We still got like a half hour to 40 minutes to get down, because there's so much more involved. I think that's, if you can cross that line and understand that you're not pushing this. It's, you got to be patient, and then time with experience. Like, listen, I was there. But then I started to listen to other people. I started to listen. I started to kind of venture out and listen to other people's information. I think it was very important for me. I'm not here from thinking that I was the one who did it. No, it was learned and understood, and I took it in, and I said, hey, open up. Let's listen to other people and see what they're doing. And I love talking to the guys who've done it outdoors, because I'm going to try my best to kind of follow suit with that. Again, they belong outside. So I want to do as much as I can, but there is a reality to it, a logical standpoint, that I am indoors. So we could just find that happy medium.
So, how do you determine a certain process change was the reason for a more successful season?
I guess I think it's that goes with that patience thing. I think I think too. It's all right. This is perfect, because I want, it's not also just the animals, right? It's understanding that concept, but then there's the me factor, the you factor, the person that's out there. It's the individual. It's that motivation to want to do things. So, like, meaning, like, you know successful year. All right, yeah, cool. I did it, man. No, it's understanding that concept, learning how to swing that back and hit contact on the ball, but continuing to do it. Getting in there as a person, because it's not just the animal. It's the person as me, the individual. It's funny, and I know you feel this way, and I know other breeders that are watching this right now are feeling the same way. When I'm waking my animals up, I know all you guys feel this is, you feel you feel motivated, want to get in there and get things done and understand. So once you figure out the concept and process of what makes it tick, it's up to you. It's up to us to get in there and try to be motivated. Be alive. It's almost like we were in brumation too, right? Wintertime. You get to that little, like, oh man, but once you kick those lights back on, if you had the concept right and you understand it, it's about hitting contact on that ball nonstop. And I think that's what it is too. It's getting in there and wanting to do it again. Sometimes as breeders, and I've gotten there, up there, and I'm sure there's other breeders out there too, is sometimes something might not, what's the word? It might not. It doesn't. You don't want it. It doesn't fit into your project. You start to get a little lackadaisical. Oh, it's there. Turn the lights on. Like I think it's up to the person and the breeder too. I think it's us that really is so important. If you can get those two to kind of come together, because believe me or not, it's not easy, man. I'm not saying this isn't to say me in the perspective that it's I'm doing this all. It's not, because I'm not perfect either, and I think it's you have your days where it's not your mental isn't 100% there. You have your moments, but if you can take those steps forward, take those little strides if you're having a bad day. I think it's important for us as an individual, not just the animal. You can have the concept down. It's up to you to really want to get there. And you know that. I'm sure you feel that.
Oh,
Yeah,
100%.
it's
Yeah,
not
I
just turn
agree.
the lights on and they're going to do their thing. No, there's things that we need to do. So once I figured out that way, it's how I continuously each year do it. And it's not perfect. I do have success, and I've actually, to be honest with you, I did have great success with the Blotch. I think I got three females to have litters, but another one slug out, so it's not perfect. But I do believe there's that correlation between me and you, us breeders, and the animals, and that motivation to really just pull it in. And if you look, it's perfect, because I loved it. So I think I'm gonna start spitting out some names. I'm not gonna say I can't get them all, but you know, first off, you and I right now are motivating factors. I mean, I feel like you doing this podcast is doing things in a positive way. You had
Yep.
a guy on here, David Levinson. I watched a piece of that, and it hit home. Is two things. We got to talk about things in a positive way. We got to feel that feeling of like we're gonna get things done. We're gonna breed. We're gonna when we sell animals to customers, we want to set them up to succeed with good animals. I'm not here just to sell animals for the money. It's a good feeling to say, hey, I want to sell these animals, and I want you to succeed. To me, there's no competition with that, because if I'm selling these animals for that person to succeed, well, he's not producing animals to create, in a sense, revenue stream that's going to get passed on, and he might come back to me. He might go to somebody else, but it helps us all together. And another great point for a motivating factor is like, watching, you had Yoshi and Manny on, and seeing them making that transition because they were motivated by Ron and Heather over there to kind of say, hey, I want to change things. I want to create a better standard and get these guys outside. I want to get them to, you know, give them a better life, and then also see myself succeed with them. And in the end, you're going to get rewarded. They're going to get rewarded. Yeah, it might not be perfect this year. I believe absolutely it's possible, but there's an adjustment there. But when they start doing that, people will follow that, and we start to create a standard in a positive way. And then you had Jeremy on here. He's trying to do great things, and I think in a positive way, he wants to be a good breeder. And then you add that different spice to the Talico family, is having those Indonesians on. He's breeding Indonesians, and I think that's bringing that other market together. And you got the Australians that are coming on, and they're sharing that information. I think it's so beautiful. It gives motivation, and I think sometimes we focus on what's going on with the animal, but I think it's the individual itself. I think that's important for us.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. And you kind of go on the theory that, and I got this saying from Barcheck, but like all boats rise with the tide or something like that.
Absolutely. Brian Barczyk is a big, big motivator. He was the one when I was younger watching his YouTube, and I'm sure a lot of people would attest. And I was good friends with Brian. We texted and exchanged with each other a lot, and he's an amazing person. And it's unfortunate what happened, but I watched him on YouTube a very long time ago. I was always in reptiles all my life, but I didn't have the belief, the motivation, the mindset to go forward. And I watched his YouTube channels. I'm saying to myself, like, man, look what he's doing. He's doing it, and if he could do it, I could do it. And it puts things in perspective. And I'm here where I'm at a lot from Brian. And I don't believe in competition. I believe in working on yourself, and I believe that doing things the right way in a positive way, like Dave Levis has said, is talking positive, giving people the right animal to do. Why would I want to give an animal to just think of one side of this, that I want cash, and then he or she goes and breeds or tries to breed, and it's a crappy animal. Excuse my language. It's a crappy animal, and they're gonna want to get out. They're not gonna want to do anything. Instead, I hand them an animal. I get the satisfaction of doing what I love. They create some revenue for me, but not even only that, they're succeeding, right? They're going to create revenue for themselves to grow, and they might want to come back to me and grow themselves. But if they don't, they're going to another breeder, and guess what? That breeder's succeeding, and that's where you made your point with the all tides rise. So, it's you know that's how I look at things in perspective. Positive, yes, stay positive. Have that mindset. Discipline. It's not going to be perfect, but how are you going to fight? How are you going to step forward and keep it moving?
How do you keep yourself so positive on like we'll say, some I'm sure, you'll have bad pairings or stuff like that.
So for breeders out there, there's two things, and I say this a lot, but there was a part in my life where I worked at a cancer hospital, and I just seen people of all ages dying, and I woke up and said, hey, then this is what creates that mindset that I could die tomorrow, and what am I doing? Like I want to be happy, I want to do what I love, and then what keeps you going is walking into something or a project and having don't think about money. I think that's very important. Obviously, to say that it's obviously you want to support what you're doing, but I always go into a project zero expectations because in a sense, if you have zero expectations, what happens after that? Everything after that is a gift. Because if you walk in expecting and saying, "Hey, I want to, I'm going to produce 20 animals out of this," expecting. And now when you produce zero, you start to have that self-doubt. Whereas you walk into something and have the mentality of saying, I'm not producing nothing. I just want to get into this project. I see the vision. That's the other important thing is you want to see what the outcome is going to be. I think that's the most important thing. Because if you could see down the line and the outcome, right, in a few years, 10 years, what is that doing? That's a motivational factor. That's saying that you want to be in here longevity. You want to be in here for a while, right? So I think if you have that zero expectations and a vision, something that you're seeing in the future, I think that's going to be very key for you as a breeder. I think anytime I think zero expectations, and I'll tell anybody else out there, I'll tell you, that if you do produce something, it's a great feeling.
I think one thing I'll add to that, it's also good to think, even further down the road, not that first breeding, maybe 5 years down the road, how you're going to take that project even further than, breeding mom to dad and just producing the first generation.
Yeah, I mean, like for instance, I can explain who has visions. Some of the lines you've created had a vision. You want to see the outcome. You have, I think, Diana. I don't want to botch the name, but she has a really dark intermedia that she created because she had a vision. I'm sure when she bred, she went, "Hey, like, look at that. That animal's gonna get, could get darker." And you kind of work that out. You got Cheryl L's on here. She produces some crazy red stuff. Everyone has a vision. You can't think in the short term aspect. You got to think in the long term, and I think that is the most important thing. I think if you can walk into something saying, "I have zero expectations. I want to see this happen in a 5-year, 10-year plan," man, you're going to be here forever, for sure. Same thing with like Kim Lancy. He saw the orange. What do you think the outcome was? And you think it happened the fall, 1 year? Maybe it might have. Who knows? Because I know, he did well, but I think that's what it is. And I think that's what will give you that motivation. That's what I love this. What I see. Same thing with the Leachianis geckos and the gargoyles and some of the other geckos is the future. What's going to happen? What am I doing next? What's going to happen next?
What ratio do you aim for blotches and westerns? Like 1-to-1?
Well, I mean, in a perfect world, I would. You always kind of. It's hard. It's hard to even say that because to be somebody to ask that has like large groups because I just want them. I just want to have, and any would try to help. So, yeah, in a perfect world, I would want numbers, but um, it's different for me with like compared to geckos. I've worked with geckos for a very long time. How important more males are. You'll know this. Everyone will tell you this. I'm sure. So, because if you don't have a male firing up, man, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble, especially if you're relying, especially with some of the rare species. Like, I mean, what does that say? So, some of the rare stuff, it's hard because I don't have the numbers really. So, I try to keep it equal. I mean, it's hard to say. I'd rather a 2.1 than the other way around, but it's possible that I would say if I were to have three animals, I wouldn't mind in Taliqua world to have two males and one female, especially some of the rare stuff. Um, but then there's the other part that I believe in that you know you need to have your numbers. I think you need to have numbers, but yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. And I think that's what I was going to say. I'm sorry, I went a little blank there, but I think having younger animals are important. So if I were to have young animals, and I were to acquire it, I probably would want a 2.1. But if you have an older female, it's hard. Some of the older stuff that maybe was conditioned in another area coming to it's hard, to say where I would want to go. But obviously, in a perfect world, you want a 6.6, right? Or a 7.6.
Yeah.
So,
Um. Now, what about your experience keeping them in pairs or groups for westerns and blotch?
so Westerns, Occipitalis, I keep them all separate. I can't say I believe I don't see nothing crazy with cohabbing with some of those species. I know guys in Australia do it, and I don't see it. And it's a little different for us because of what we have. So I stay away from keeping my occipitalis. And I do believe that you know keeping them I believe that keeping them together, especially occipitalis, in an indoor environment. I'm not saying that it can't be done. It has been done, but I feel like the odds are in your favor to kind of have males being waking up first a little bit and then going into females. Whereas if you were to kept them together and you're getting those temps up, you can mess with timing there because your male might take just as long as your female, and they might both almost be there, but because you're spiking those temps up, females' window will be gone and dusted. Whereas males, they can I believe can create sperm plugs for a month. They could probably have it. Whereas females' windows are a little shorter. So as far as like during breeding season, like my blotch, I like to keep the females together. They do fine. I back then I tried it. I tried to keep males with females, and it didn't go good in the sense. Now I'm not saying it can't go good during after breeding. Once those males kind of chill out, it really isn't as bad. But I don't, as a person in the United States, I don't because males tend to be absolutely relentless. And I just feel like it seems like there's just a lot of stress on the girls, and I'd rather just keep them separate. They do well together. I've never had any issues. There's a pecking order in a sense, and so I've learned this from Richard, and then when I got it, I saw it. Richard Connolly in Australia. It's a little different than a gurney is, where gurneys are more social. There's a more social aspect to it, but there's a micro of social environment with the blotch, but there tends to be like the hierarchy female in there that just kind of actually funny. I think I did a video on Gary on YouTube, and as I was placing the female in the enclosure, if you notice in the video, if anybody were to watch it, it wasn't an attack to harm. It was an attack to say, get out of my area. It was a pecking order saying, hey, enough now. And if you notice, the one that was less dominant walked away, walked out, and then she kind of just, held her ground. And it was kind of stupid on my end to kind of place her back right in front, whereas I should have placed her a little bit to the side. But, giving you an idea there, I'd never seen fights. The only thing I could say, and this is honest, I want to be as honest as possible too. if anybody would have ever, I believe, feeding some of the meaty, bloody, meaning like quail, mice, even bugs, tends to be a problem. And I see that with Agurnia, especially superworms with Agurnia, because it's like the spaghetti sticking out. What was the two dog movie where they're eating spaghetti as they're kissing? It's kind of the same thing there. Is when one grabs and it's sticking out of that mouth a little bit, man, the other Agurnia will come and just and it a real good head shake. Not saying that it's absolutely going to be harmful, but it is kind of dangerous. So what I try to do when I cohab the female blotched is I kind of separate them in different areas. And I play a game in a sense, like fishing here. And you have the alligator, and you're fishing for a fish in the lake, and you got to try to be quick to get the fish, but then you got the alligator or crocodile coming at you to try to grab it. It's kind of the same thing there, is where I try to separate them in the enclosure, and the pits I have are like 6 feet, by 3 feet wide. So I'll feed them kind of fast to get in separate areas, because if they're together and I'm feeding that type of stuff, their predatory type of instinct kind of kicks. And I'm not saying it's like detrimental, like they're gonna die, but it could be dangerous and something stupid could happen. And again, we don't have plenty full of Blotch here, and I don't want to make a mistake, so I try to just separate them. So maybe that's a point for people out there that might want to think about it. And again, anybody can message me if they want to ask questions. But that's kind of how I do things. Other breeders don't do those things; they separate it. But sometimes it's hard because what I'm trying to do for myself is create a standard, and maybe create the standard for somebody else is I like big enclosures. And it's hard when you have 6 feet by 3 feet. It takes up almost the whole room. So I say to myself here, well, we could get away with putting them together, all the females, and it's worked for years. I've done it for years. And I'd rather that than cage space. I don't mind the social. Maybe in years, domestication wise, it maybe could help them. Maybe it helps them become a better pet. Maybe it helps them become better socialization. I don't know. And I wouldn't doubt with occipitalis, it's possible too. There's not, you know, I think there's a timing thing that I need to figure out. So I'd try to do it more for reproduction, but then cohabbing them. So, but I know people do it, and I'm not against. I don't see. To me, it's like if it works for you, like I can't judge. It just can't. It's kind of dumb. So
Well, that makes sense. Your goal, you don't want anything to happen to your skinks, that you don't want to risk it. And you want to, especially being kind of limited numbers, you doing your part to hopefully reproduce more is going to make everyone's life easier down the road, from being able to actually get the animals for one, but then, figuring out the multiple systems that work, at least for you in your area.
yep, and it's that vision, like I said, and that motivation. Like my goal. I mean, it's not going to be easy, and but I really do want to have another separate building that there's some type of skylight situation from above, and side really good long side windows to get good sun in. And then I was even thinking recently, I just thought this, but it's not going to be easy. It's going to be very expensive, and I probably don't have to do it, but I would love to have some type of attachment to that building where the skylights are and the windows are, and maybe like an open window system where I can get it, and then a greenhouse kind of somewhat attached to it, so that they can, and I can extend the pits from the inside and the outside, so that maybe we can get some outside sun, and maybe see if there's some type of change there. And that's the push. I just I think that it's creating that standard for the future, and trying to do more. And I think they will reward you more if you give them more, and that's what I've noticed. I'm not saying that what other people doing are wrong. I don't want to be like in a violent type of way where we're like talking things negative. It's not perfect, but if you can try to find a way to better yourself, I think it could be helpful and beneficial to you and the animal. I believe.
Oh, I definitely agree. And, over time, your animals will reward you.
Yep.
This question I made, and I I'll still
I
ask
see
it.
you smirking. See you smirking.
Well, so I changed my mind after the way you answered your other one, but it was so say I win the lottery and I call you to help design the perfect stacking pit enclosures. How are we going to build it? But now I wonder if it would be better to not do it that way, being, warming up the males earlier than the females
Well, I mean,
normally.
in the perfect world, I mean, and it's probably what I'm doing is so I believe in all reptiles. I don't believe in this giant warehouse, and I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm saying what's beneficial to the reptiles. I would believe more. I look at things in a macro and a micro scale. Meaning macro meaning very large, micro meaning small. In a macro scale, if I had a giant warehouse, I would absolutely say no to breeding any type of reptile in it. And I'm not saying it's impossible. I like micro environments, stuff that I can control somewhat and almost create as if they were outside. So, in a sense, like, having smaller rooms. I would love small rooms. Build a building and create rooms, micro environments, understanding how to do things at a micro scale, controlling things, putting different sexes so that you can control. In a sense, you are Mother Nature, right? So I think that could play a part. As far as building the perfect pit, I didn't. Absolutely did not build the perfect pit. I just and I noticed, and I've learned. I'm learning right now. This was not permanent. If anybody watched Gary Shavino's video on YouTube that I made, that's not permanent. That was just a very temporary setup. Understanding this is the way I feel, but it's not perfect. So meaning there is something that I believe I would take away and maybe try to improve. So if anybody knows, like towards the back, I did this open up panel, and so the pit goes up. I want to say almost 2 feet, and in the back, I made a spot where they can kind of go under and hide. What I feel is a lot of these skinks they weren't going and hiding in there, and I believe if you open it up, it's very open. And I think they don't, even though it's closed, but it's so high off the ground, they don't feel secure. I feel that if I were to build something more or less this height so they could almost wedge themselves in and feel secure because they don't use that hide spot. They go in there every once in a while, just kind of travel. But I just don't see it's not as beneficiary, where they're actually hiding. Where if they notice in the pits, I had these little hide setups that are about this high, little ledges. They're using that. They're using that more, and they love it. And the cork part flats. So what I've noticed that they want that security. They want to feel that there's something kind of on top of them that they feel that they're almost like, in a sense, bubbled in. I think that's something I would improve is like in their hide spot, we're gonna bring it low and have where I open kind of more of like a 4 inch or 5 inch kind of gap, so they feel secure. And then number two, I believe, which I'm gonna do this year, which I can modify, is a humidity hide. I believe that in the reptile world, what's you ever heard of the Swiss Army knife? So
Yeah.
I believe a Swiss Army knife is made for many different things. It's a tool all within one, and I think that is something we can go towards in the future with any type of reptile in a sense. If you could give them as many microclimates and the Swiss Army knife of cages, you're going to be better off. So what I want to do is kind of make like a humid hide, where I can get them because I hate, I'm not gonna lie, I don't like soaking. I don't want to have to pick them up, put them in the tub, and let them sit there forever. I want them to have everything they want and need, so I don't really have to touch them too much. So I believe that maybe a nice humid hide in there with some like cocoa. But I would advise anybody with some of those cooler brumation. So what I would do is during when I'm going into a cool down, we're removing all that. We don't want them to go start to shut their system down and kind of gather that in. That's something I want to enhance maybe to it is having a little spot where maybe they can go underneath something and go into like a area where they could just get that shed off. They know what they're doing. Everybody here knows a Taliqua when they're going into a shed, they're literally you'll know when they go into a shed. You go into that enclosure, it's destroyed.
Yeah.
Everything is all over the place because they're trying to get a way to get all that off. it's annoying, you know. So they're trying to find ways, you know. I believe that if I gave them a nice human hide, an area where they can go kind of get their clothes off a little faster, it would be good. Obviously, misting would help, especially in an enclosure. But I have the open top, so it's harder. The humidity kind of escapes quickly. So that's something I want to do. I believe in, you know, when you like an example, you know, when you go to a car factory, like, you know, you see the shell of the car and it's, you know, it's like a cage, you know, it's just the shell there, but it's so important what's going on that they're building on the internals, what's making it functionable. And I believe that, you know, it's same thing with cages. It's not just the cage, the light and a hide spot, and that's it. There's so many different levels to what you need, like a Swiss Army knife. And that's kind of going to be my push to when I build the next building is having setups where it's a multifaceted, a multi-tool Swiss Army knife that I can get everything I need without even touching my hands or doing nothing. You know. I'm
Couldn't
sorry.
and
I went on a big. I go on my rants. So.
no, you're good.
Yeah.
Uh, even though yours are kind of open top, couldn't you, you know, just make put a tub in there with a hole in the side and put some moss in there for now and let's take those out?
Yeah, I mean that is something very easy, but when I move, it's going to be more like a separate, like the pit, and then like a separate entity, almost attached, so that they can literally go walk into a separate, almost a micro enclosure, and literally I'll put like cocoa. It's gonna be more of a mulch kind of cocoa fiber mix, and then I have an area where I can just lift up, you know, maybe something that they can walk into, and I can also lift up, see what they're doing, see where they're at, have access, and then maybe even mist a little bit if I need to kind of get more moisture in there. But this is what I want to make sure that everyone knows that this is more towards the summer months. I wouldn't, even though I know they probably wouldn't go in that direction, but I wouldn't want moisture or any humidity hide while they're in brumation. That would be something I probably totally clean out and kind of just prep them up, or even maybe like a hinge that they can't get access to it. That could be something too. But that's my push. You know, this is all temporary. The stuff I'm doing. It's just trying to understand what they want, what they need, what they're doing, and it's all the percentages. What is percentage of are they using in the collection? Are a high percentage using this area? Is it worth it when I go to build the next one? So that's kind of how I do it.
So then, say someone was gonna set up their reptile room with enclosures and they're going to breed blotches or westerns, would you say 4x2x2s or 18-inch tall would be more than good enough? And or would you even, since you like bigger, go bigger?
Um, I mean, that's what I prefer, but I don't think that's what's the word? Not everybody can do that. So that's crazy to, you know, not crazy. I mean, and you could do it, but some people are subjected to certain things, certain rooms, you know, so it's hard to just kind of say this is what I do and I want it this way. I think the 4x2x2s, the 4 feet, you know, wide. If you get maybe a little shorter, it can help. You know, the added space, you know, sometimes isn't. I mean, I like the halogens; it kind of still will work if you have a 2 foot. But I do like bigger, you know, certain species, but I wouldn't say, you know, putting a bunch of animals in a 4 footer. I like to put like singles, but you know, maybe if someone you know, it works for somebody with a pair in there, that's fine. But I would say 4 foot minimum, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But breeders, it's different. You know that. I know you know that, Alex. Being a breeder, sometimes you know, we do have to create a better standard, but it's not always, you know, sunshine and rainbows on how to do things. You know.
Well, and that's what's hard, you know, you gotta try to find the happy middle for you and them, and
Yeah.
you know, in the end, just slowly keep progressing and doing better. I think it's the way to do it. You know,
Yeah. I mean,
whether
go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, you know, whether it's, you know, you and add better diets each year, you know, adding some more variety throughout time, you know, bigger enclosures, or you know, a little more enrichment here and there.
Yeah. No, to be honest with you, like back to the motivational thing. Like motivates me to want to do better when I watch them in these enclosures. It is unbelievable. You don't understand, like watching Taliqua like climb very high and love it. And I think that's an amazing enrichment because you got these animals that are using their cognitive, they're using their brain. Their sensories are at full blast. Which creates a better animal. You got nail trimming. They're trimming their nails as they're doing that. They're creating that muscle, and I believe that can be beneficiary to babies. Why would I say that? Like, I believe a certain species that have like bigger babies. I mean, if they're, you know, getting that activation, that activity and moving around, the babies won't come out as, they'll come out more fit in a sense, or like, we won't have like not stillborns, I guess, what is it, egg bound, or females that aren't pulling out their babies,
Yeah.
because they're moving, they're physical, they're keeping their system moving. The babies inside are, constantly, everything's kind of full blast where they come out, nice and healthy. The female's nice and healthy. So I think there's just so much enrichment, and it's cool to see. That's what I love when I walk into the room and watch these animals moving nonstop, climbing, and it's almost like it still ain't enough. Like, that's what I feel sometimes. So,
Well, I think that's great that you're striving to keep offering better. We touched briefly on this. Anything else that's interesting about the environment of blotches or westerns, really?
how much they love sun patches. So I have these windows that are very large, and they bring in a very heavy amount of sun. They will literally 100% of the time take that sun patch over the basking bulb. And it's really cool to see. So that's something I want to put involved and really get, is that I can bring in that sun as much as I can. And it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be easy, but I'll do the best I can. You got understanding the way that the sun comes up and down, and finding that right spot in the area I'm at would be very beneficiary for sure. I'm sure there's other things that aren't on the top of my head right now. But like the tight spaces we talked about, they like to go in tight spaces. They feel comfortable. I feel like that's a predatory instinct, like a, what's the word, like, so no, like being safe from predators in a sense, almost like creating that bubble of security. So I feel like
Yeah.
that's pretty important. Understanding humidity. A lot of people say that these guys, like, oh, like, they need no humidity. It's not true. I believe they're during wake up, when their systems are at full level, and they're moving and they're eating and they're pooping, humidity can be very beneficial. I don't think stagnant humidity and not cleaning your cage too can be a very big one that can cause a lot of issues. But I think humidity does help more than you think with some of these guys. That's what I've noticed too over the years.
Do you have any like humidifiers or anything going on since you have
No,
open?
no. So where I'm at, like, it gets subtropical during summer, so it kicks up. What I like to do is get good fans in there, get that air circulating. You don't want too much stagnant air. Stagnant air and bacteria can create problems. So when you're keeping that there, it could be a problem. But moving the air around, I think, kind of helps too. But the humidity, summertime goes into the 60s, man. You'd be surprised, and I go cool. It's not doesn't bother me. I don't see an absolute issue. Um, During winter months, I would advise that's where the problems can occur. Absolute 100%.
Yeah, and that's just you don't want them to get too humid when it's cold.
They're not fighting anything. Their heart rate's slowed down. Their systems are pretty much preserved. Anything that slips in there, it could be problem. It could be a problem. Cold. You can ask some of the guys in Florida. If they get those dips, man, and it's raining for a long period of time, that is very dangerous. Very dangerous.
Yeah, that's respiratories, and then
Absolutely. Yep.
I don't know if
I give it
bacteria.
to the guys in Florida. Like, a lot of people say that it's easy. What's easy is the sun. That's about it. Now you got to find a way to make it work and find when it's raining out, when it gets cold, you are micromanaging like crazy. You know, finding the shade spots, finding, what's going to happen here. I give it to them. I don't know if I could do it because it's a lot. It's a lot. Being able to keep up, and I praise those guys. And they're teaching. They're teaching some of the people that can make it work. But it's a lot of adjustments when you're out there in that cold. I'm sure people in Australia too. They have to find the right spot. Um, to make it work, right? So
Well,
I
and I
think you
know
have Ron,
like
you have Ron over there too. I think you had him on. He has those Gurney Cunningham, the Cunningham eyes that they're out there. The Cunningham skinks, he does well with them out there. So that's a perfect example. Some of those guys do great. Do great outside over there, and I think if I'm not mistaken, he does have to micromanage. Put shade
yeah.
in a certain spot, have good drainage. Make it work. I'm sure he has to find a good spot in his backyard where make it work for them to kind of breed and stuff like that. So that's something I'm going to do here. I want to get them outside, but you and I know it's a much shorter period of time, and I still want them enclosed, but it's gonna be more like a greenhouse setup. I don't want them to go outside. So
Well, in the greenhouse, they'll get some sun and you don't have to worry about dealing with the snow and the horrible winters we get. Like, otherwise you're going to have to get heat pads out there with them.
oh yeah,
And
no, they'll never go outside.
yeah,
Yeah, I would. I don't know if I would sleep at night. That would probably be the case. I still don't sleep good right now during brumation. I go to bed. And God forbid the power goes out. We're in trouble, right?
yeah, that's a scary thing. Do you have a generator?
Yes, yeah, I
Yep,
make sure I have a
nice.
generator. Yeah, yeah, and then like whenever like a big storm comes, I prep. I have my gas. I have all my outlets, all my cords ready. I start the generator just in case. And then you have to prepare. You don't want to make a mistake.
This one, I'm guessing's a no, but are there any hidden genes floating around, whether skinks or geckos?
Hidden genes? Nah,
Yeah.
those hidden
No,
genes are gone now. If you know what I mean. So.
no, like super stripe alpine blotches or
So yeah, I mean, I don't consider like you can. I'm sure if you get Kim Lancy on here, I have animals that blotch that have these crazy stripes, but I just don't know if it's genetic, and I don't see there being any type of proven fact, but I noticed that some come out like crazy stripes, and they're cool and they stay here usually most of the time. Maybe I might have a couple, maybe one or two go, but it's hard for me to get rid of them because it's just really cool to see. So that is what we have. These real nice. I have a couple of those. I actually have a male going this year. Crazy stripes. Actually, I do have a male from Kim. Just really nice stripe on them and with good orange. So that would be. I don't know if it's a hidden gene, but more like polygenetic type of situation.
well, and still, those are still great things to work towards.
Yeah, it's a motivation factor. It's what I'm seeing in the
Yeah.
future. I would love to get more. The ones that look like that. Actually, I have a really nice female too. So that female produced. Well, here you go. So that female was bred to a male that had crazy stripes. The baby I produced from it has really nice stripes. So I don't know if that's proven to be genetic, but she is. I have her downstairs. She's beautiful, man. She is beautiful.
What about I haven't seen any personally in the US, but like blotches with white stripes for alpines.
I don't have anything like that, but I do have one of my Thai Park females. She has like real light kind of pattern, like her blotched or like yellowish kind of light coloring. And I would love to get some babies from her. I'm gonna keep going. She shows all signs. She goes into her window. She brumates very properly. So
Yeah, that one's hard because she lived a couple years in Florida, and then since then she's been up there with you. You'd think she'd settle in by now.
yeah, I mean to be honest with you, I haven't given her a much of the best fair shot. because I had more priorities because of what I was subjected to very few males. I mean, there was a time I had just one male to like three females. So my priority was, you know, to go after the ones that are taking, and then she kind of was on the back burner. So this year it's very possible. So
Well, and that goes to numbers game, having enough males and putting the males that are willing to do the job into the best case
yeah,
scenario girl.
you can have a ton of females. Well, still got to get those males to do what they have to do, and I wouldn't advise putting a blotch male to three or four females. It's not easy, and it kind of burns him out. So, it's it's good to have both ratios. And in the Taliqua world, everyone knows that males are just as important, in my opinion.
Yeah. Um, what are the odds that you could convince, like, we'll say Dave Sutton or some of the other older skink breeders to come on, and then like you could co-host, and we'll have them come on also?
I could try. I could try. I have to
All right.
message them first. I don't want to, just say it. Yep, yep, they're gonna come on. But if you want me
No,
to,
yeah.
yeah, if you want me to, for sure, I would love to. I would try
I,
to.
I think
That'd be
it's worth
great.
asking. Worst case they say, well, I don't like the internet or, something, and we'll say, well,
Yeah,
we'll ask them again in a year or something.
all right. I might try to do that. We'll see. We'll maybe, even if you get them on singly, and then another podcast, we can have us all, a bunch of us together. You know,
Yeah, even
because I'm the young cat. So I gotta, they gotta have let them have the podcast, and then I come on.
well, but the nice thing about, like, say having you on there, you could have some good insights for good questions also that I might not think of at the time.
Yeah, and I do believe, like, for any breeder coming up, or even any breeder, it's like I go back to that recipe book type thing. Is like gain those ingredients, or certain things that you need to get that dish. And I believe that that's the same thing with understanding what all breeders are doing. What's going on, and that's what I did when I first started. I took a little from everybody, and a lot of it came together the same. The concept was there, but there's this little piece that I was like, yeah, maybe we'll put that into the programmer. I like what he said there, and let's try that. And I think that that works great. And I think having perspective, don't just take my word for everything. Get it from some others, and that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, I try to listen to a little bit of everything, watch a lot from anywhere from skinks, snakes, lizards
Yeah,
to,
exactly.
you
I
know,
believe that it's they're a lot of them have certain things to them that work the same way with skinks and different species of animals, for sure. You know.
well, I wanted to thank you for coming on tonight. Um, is there anything you'd like to add? Otherwise, where can everyone find you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing I'd like to add is just don't be afraid. Like you know uh, think that you can do it. You could do it, and I was there too. I had that feel. I had that feeling where you had some doubt in your head, and maybe some doubt from some others. But having a good support system helps. But feel that you could do it. Have discipline, be motivated. And we're all here together. I think that we can all play a part. We all can help each other. Everyone could succeed together, and I think that it's important. Stay positive. I think that's very important. Negativity isn't good. Gets people out. And don't want to get involved. Setting them up for failure doesn't help at all. So doing the right thing is important, for sure. Now, we're not perfect, obviously, but take those steps forward if you're having a bad day. If you feel that, I have my days too where it's not perfect, but if I say to myself, hey, like, I was supposed to do 10 things today, if I could try to find myself to even do a couple of them and feel, like I did a good job, I think that helps. So, and as far as finding me, yeah, it's the Johnny underscore Rax, JOHNNY underscore RHACS is on my Instagram. And then, my first and last name for like Facebook, but I don't really use that for animals too much. So, but I appreciate you. Alex, we talked about this. Like you play a big role too for this hobby, having these podcasts and doing it, having structure, doing it, each week. It not only helps you, it helps me, it helps viewers. And again, that's a circle right there. Everyone's, together and on the same page. So
Well, and like we talked about earlier, the more people that are successful, there's going to be more people learning about hobby from those people, whether they're, in a different state or a different country.
yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. I give props and the Australian guys. You had one of them on here, and hearing perspective from everybody is important, and that's how I succeeded too. Is not be afraid trying to reach out to some of the guys that are on the forums. That can give you a little bit of a knowledge, and I think we can all come together. In a sense. And again, it's not like it's for the animals too. It's not ego driven. It's it helps the animals in a sense. Like listen, you're not going to like everybody, but if they need some type of little help towards keeping the animals and making them stay alive and flourishing, don't be afraid to help out. And I appreciate it. Some of the Australian guys and the guys in this country, and I've had guys in Canada. I think I haven't talked to him a while over there. Dom Patterson. We've had talks. I'd actually like to catch up with him, but it's all fun. You got to be excited. I'm excited. I know you're excited to get those
Oh
blocks
yeah.
going, right? I'm excited for you. I want to see you breed them things.
I was really hoping to get it done before today, but the
But
mail
yeah,
didn't shed yet.
yeah. But hopefully this podcast gave you a little, a little push, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. And I don't know if did anybody have any questions, or we're any more, or we're good. Anybody want to
I
ask
didn't
any
really,
questions?
not really, no. There was one guy said hi, but we got Joey said these podcasts have given him more confidence for sure.
That's it. That's what it's about. That's good.
Uh, Gecko Co said watch Johnny with me in a few weeks.
Oh yeah, Bobby, he's watching it. Nice. Yeah, I just messaged him. I had to get a podcast with him for it. We talk about the gargoyles, Rhacodactylus ciliatus. So I'm excited for that for sure.
Oh, nice.
I'm not ciliatus. I'm sorry, the gargoyles. Sorry. Yeah, we're gonna
Not
talk
the
about some gargs.
okay.
Yeah. Say different
Well,
crest of
and
geckos.
I also have your links and stuff in the description if anyone missed them when you said them.
I
Thank
can
you
try to.
again for coming
Yeah.
on, and
I appreciate you letting me get on here. So.
you have a great rest of your night. And I'm gonna hit end stream.
All right. See you, Alex. Thank you.